I'd like to say more about my experience as a victim and survivor of clergy sexual abuse. Monsignor Daniel J. Martin molested me in Erie, Pennsylvania from 1985 to 1989. From the time I was 16, probably even 15, um, until 19 years of age. During that time period, I visited him wherever he was living, first on a weekly basis, and then every other week, and gradually less and less until I had the strength to break out of the dynamic he established. While he was pastor of St. George Church, which was just 2 blocks from my family home, I would visit by myself in St. George Rectory on a weekly basis. Although I worked in the rectory as a student secretary and was involved as an altar boy or a church musician, and as I've said, the church was simply in my neighborhood, the instances of molestation, the instances when Father Martin abused me, always happened outside of these contexts. So it was never like in an official type of context or circumstance. It was always when he knew that I was out in the neighborhood or on the church property or walking by or whatever, and ultimately when he knew that the rectory was empty, that he would draw me in and molest me. It's not easy to talk about, but I was experiencing a degree of emotional neglect at home. He knew this from hearing my confessions, but also my parents' confessions. They were faithful Catholics. They went to him with their problems and went to him for counsel. And he capitalized on this. To my mind, Father Martin, in fact, groomed me for abuse from the time that I was 5 years old. He was always giving me special attention. And he waited ultimately to move on me until the moment he realized that I was most vulnerable and isolated. Although it was said that he retired because of gout, and although I never recall noticing or hearing about symptoms, I was always around him. He essentially was forced by Bishop Murphy to retire early in 1986 while I was 17 and a junior in high school. He went on to live with Father Donald Cooper at Mount Calvary Parish in retirement until Father Cooper himself was charged with indecent exposure and forced to resign his pastorate of Mount Calvary. Subsequently, Father Martin moved to live by himself in the chaplain's quarters above the chapel of Mercyhurst College, where he continued to molest me until I was 19. It's important to note a couple of things here. First of all, the president of Mercyhurst College, who welcomed Father Martin to live on campus, was William Garvey. At that time, he was the president. He's recently been identified as a child abuser himself, and he provided Father Martin with his residence at Mercyhurst. Father Donald Cooper, who had that instance of indecent exposure at Presque Isle State Park, is also on the list of people that are ineligible, unsuitable to work with young people, although he's deceased as well. So Father Martin is deceased, and Bill Garvey is also more recently deceased. But unbeknownst to me, in his recent presentation of abuser priests and those ineligible to work in the Diocese of Erie with children, Bishop Persico noted that Father Martin was on restricted ministry in retirement. Well, Bishop Persico never knew Father Martin, and so it's a question for me, why was he still saying Mass at Mercyhurst College, or why was he saying Mass at Mount Calvary Parish in retirement if he was on restricted ministry. And obviously the more germane question is, how was this man allowed to molest me when he was restricted in ministry and retirement? He molested me most of the time while he was in retirement. So that all of that is a summary of what happened to me, the context of it, and the time frame. There's obviously much more that I can say, have said, and will say when it's appropriate.